Hey guys, I got another concert to talk about.
Neat.
It isn't Skyrim again, is it?
And it even has an interview with one of the musicians.
Oh, right on.
Posvenska!
What?
Did you just speak Swedish?
Welcome to the Music Arcade!
Hello everyone, I'm Galen the Sound Guy Firestone. Welcome to this episode of Music Arcade.
I'm Ronaked and I can't get Spanish and Swedish correctly.
And I'm Eddie, and today I've learned 2 words in Swedish.
Yay!
One of them being Swedish.
Exactly. Very useful for traveling abroad.
Fun fact, I'll be
assembling furniture.
Fun fact, as of recording, 1 week from today, I'm going to be seeing a Swedish band.
Fun
about
fact,
right.
1 day from today, Sweden has won Eurovision, and it's not like we knew it when we decided on the topic, but...
So,
I mean, I'm not gonna say it's because of us that they won,
I'll take
but
credit.
I'm not saying that.
Prophecy?
Our oracular powers are very powerful.
Even though Finland was the more entertaining song, in my opinion.
I didn't watch Eurovision, so I have no...
And the opinion of the public, given that they raked like 340 points.
Oh, so was this like a thing where the judges decided they were going to win as opposed to the public
Yep.
voting? Oh, I
Yep.
hate that. That's
Honestly,
never
when
satisfying.
When it comes to Eurovision, I just wait for Todd in the Shadows podcast to have an opinion. And then I have his opinion.
I don't know. I'm going to be honest. There are a couple of like Eurovision tracks that I've been down with. That one punk band with the topless chick. Not just for the topless chick, but I do like that band actually. What was it, Måneskin or something? They're actually pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah,
Måneskin,
I
yeah.
really
have-
liked it,
they have good music. Lordy,
Yeah.
obviously, Hard Rock Hallelujah. That's kind of
obviously.
a cheesy metal staple. Like, no, there's some good Eurovision in there.
That there is.
That Israeli chick from 2 years ago, Toy, I think was the name of the song. Like, that was pretty good. Like, no, I'm not opposed to Eurovision. I just don't really, I'm not European, so I don't really dive into it.
Well, neither are the Australians, and they bring some good songs sometimes.
Very fair. Australia's got some good music when you know where to find them. Shout out to
the
Triamera,
Euro
I
part,
guess.
The Euro part of Eurovision is becoming more abstract as time goes by.
Well, Israel's definitely not on Europe. At least Australia has, like, European history, because it's, a Commonwealth colony, but, like...
Yeah, but at this point, the USA has European history.
I mean, that
what
is correct.
Colonizing do.
That is accurate, yes. Anyways, let's talk about what we're actually talking about.
Yes, concerts, am I right?
Concerts. So this one came about kind of funnily. We were kind of struggling for a topic, and I'm just like, well, I brought concerts a bunch. We haven't done a concert in a while. Randa's brought a couple. Eddie's only brought one. So I'm like, Eddie, I challenge you to pick a concert, and he picked this one.
Full transparency, I only know this exists because of the ever mystifying YouTube algorithm. So, back in the day, before I hated Tommy Tallarico's guts, I used to watch video games live performances on YouTube.
I'm
And
going to
so
have comments about
YouTube
exactly
would-
this.
Yeah. But as a result of that, YouTube would constantly go, oh, hey, you like video game concerts. Have a video game concert. And so somehow I learned of this one about half a decade ago. But yeah, it's a concert in Sweden by the Swedish Radio Symphony Orchestra that was aired on TV. It's part of their Score Orchestral Game Music project, which is still ongoing. According to their website, they had a recent run in 2022/2023.
Yeah, these arrangements are by Andreas Hedlund, and they are pretty damn good. There's a couple that I'm a little, like, iffy on, but generally speaking, I'm very pleased with these mixes, these arrangements.
Yeah, I'll go in detail a bit later, but there are some arrangements that I was impressed at how elaborate they went.
It does the job of being a video game concertal. It does the job as being a video game orchestral arrangements. Yes.
Yeah. And
I
with
think
that,
also another pretty cool thing, in my opinion, is that they aren't really focused on just bringing what's popular right now.
yeah.
They seem to just want to grab whatever songs they can make cool arrangements of.
Yeah, there's a couple songs in here that I was like, oh, I was not expecting to hear this one. And we will definitely be talking about that in one of the later tracks where I literally, I almost fell out of my chair when I heard something start playing. I was like, oh my god, they're actually playing this? My day is made.
I may have a bit of a different take on that one, but I will probably keep that for the overall conclusion. Because it's a point that I would best belabor once we are past looking at the tracks a bit more in detail.
Fair enough. Well, let's start looking at them in detail. The first track up is Journey. I didn't write the name of the song because my notes are terrible.
I was born for this.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's the name of the song then?
Yeah, according to the notes we got, I should be, just for full transparency before we move along, the notes we have from the concert have been translated by others.
Yeah.
So there could be a game of telephone going on, but this is, I think, the only song in the set that wasn't a new arrangement. This one was entirely credited to Austin Wintory.
Which makes sense.
The only extra credits were the vocals and the conductor.
Right. Which makes sense because it's this song. So, fun fact, and this is where I have to kind of get into this. This is where we're introduced to... Well, this isn't a fun fact yet, but she is very good. This is where we're introduced to the featured singer, Sabine Zweiacker. I think that's how you pronounce her name.
You wouldn't know.
I tried looking the pronunciation, but I could only find the German pronunciation because it's a German surname.
I'm pretty sure
Sabine
that's the correct
Zweiacker.
one. That is a German name, even I can tell that.
Yeah, maybe they pronounce it differently in Sweden. I wouldn't know. But anyway, that's her, yes.
Yes. Now, here's the fun fact. You mentioned Video Games Live. Hey, guess what? This song's in Video Games Live. Not that I know for a fact who the singer was, because it's Video Games Live, and therefore crediting is not their strong suit. I don't think that's a particularly hot take, given Tommy Tallarico's history.
Hi, Tommy. Hope you're listening to this.
I hope he isn't, because I'm about to fucking thrash on this guy.
Retake?
No, I'm bleeping that.
Okay.
So, I believe that the singer in the Video Game Live version is Jillian Aversa. I say I believe that because I know she was associated with Video Games Live, and it makes sense, but I can't say that to a certainty. Great, thanks, Tommy. Appreciate not being able to officially credit somebody. Here's the thing. In the Video Games Live version, they couldn't... I feel like they would have gotten rid of the singer if they could have, because I recognize that the singing's there, but you can't really do this song without it. It'd be like trying to do Hills of Radiant Wind without Emmy Evans on your concert.
Yeah.
So, but she was very downplayed in that version of the song, the singer. This is a much more subtle arrangement this time around, and they put Sabine Zweiacker right front and center, and they let her carry this thing, and boy howdy, that little girl got some big pipes on her.
Oh yeah, she sounds great. We'll hear more about her later on, and
yeah.
I loved pretty much every minute of her on stage. There were some moments where the mixing was weird, not on this track in particular. I didn't have problems with it, but her performance itself, I'd say it was great throughout.
Yeah. And it's like, I have to compare and contrast the two, because these are two live versions of the same song. It's like, it feels so refreshing to hear an arrangement that isn't like, I must be awesome, and actually tries to play music instead. It's really, like, going back to it, when Video Games Live was the only game in town, like, they won basically on novelty factor alone. But now that we have actual professionals doing this, like, man, Tommy is not that good. His arrangements are not good. As for this one, we are unfortunately not going to be done talking about Tommy throughout this thing, but for at least this song, we're done. Yeah, this one's really... I guess my only complaint is that the horns are a little hyped up. Like, the horn mixing's a little much.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The original version is much more peaceful, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't feel it would stand up on its own in a concert hall if it wasn't a little bit more eloquent, let's say. Like, it does need to take into consideration the fact it's going to take center stage.
Yeah.
And through that, it still keeps its peaceful, journey-like atmosphere, so I'm down.
Yeah, I think it might not be my favorite take because of that, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It is really, really cool, really fun, even if it's a bit louder than I'm used to. I think it's mostly just a comparison thing. I'm used to the album version of the song.
Nice.
Yeah.
But I can't say it doesn't fit the vibe of the song as well, because even though it's a fairly peaceful song, the title is I Was Born for This. And you can get more I'm ready, this is my thing, but stronger vibes in that line than with a full brass section.
Yeah. That is true. I don't know, I feel the individual mixing's a little rough, and that's actually a pretty common thing here. I think just the horns in general were a little, like, overmixed, but, I mean, that's just me being a sound guy. That's just me being a sound guy. But honestly, this mix is terrific. It's subtle without being, like, too quiet to play.
Yeah. It serves really nicely also as an opener, in my opinion, because
yeah,
we'll talk about the interview later. They mentioned that it is a more targeted audience and all that, but at the end of the day, this still is the Swedish Radio Symphony Orchestra at their own concert hall.
Right.
This is a special place where they're playing these video game tracks. So starting with this piece that I'd say it's probably the one piece in the concert that outside of the closing piece, it's the one that's closer to your typical sound of an orchestral performance of classical music. Maybe contemporary classical would be something similar to this.
I'm not sure I agree with that statement, because our very next song, which I know we're not going to talk about yet, but I think our very next song is also very much, like, in that vein as well.
I guess I kind of see it. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I've played that game a lot. But both of them make for good entry points for the set list.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, with one being more moody and the other being more of an energetic start.
There's nothing wrong with being a little bombastic from time to time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's me talking, so...
I mean, the orchestra seems to have loved being bombastic, because we don't necessarily see this on this song, because it's more laid back. But quite often the camera zooms in on either the conductor or some of the performers, and they're just smiling so often.
Yeah.
They seem to have loved playing those more bombastic tracks.
These are artists who want to be here. These are performers who want to be here. I guess we're talking about the more bombastic track now, yeah?
We can start it. Yes. It's the Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag Suite. It's mostly the main theme with some combat themes in the middle.
And my exact response to this song was, wait a second, I've heard this one of VGL 2. What was that the game? Was that the game here? Do better than Tommy Tallarico? Well, they are. They just are.
Honestly, I thought this was better than the original by quite a long shot.
You would know better than me, but that's a hell of a statement.
Yeah, it's not that necessarily the Assassin's Creed 4 soundtrack is bad, but I'd say along with 3, it's one of the most generic games in the franchise when it comes to the soundtrack. Because it's, for the most part, just generic adventure movie type stuff.
Yeah.
Because they were heavily influenced by Pirates of the Caribbean.
We'll talk about that later as well.
Yeah. And the original version of the tracks, they have a little bit of synth in the back, because Assassin's Creed has that sort of futuristic vibe where you're reliving memories rather than actually being in the past.
What was the name of that thing they used?
The Animus.
Animus, there it is, thank you.
Yeah. Here they don't have any synths. This really is a traditional orchestra setup. The one thing that some people might think is a bit off from an orchestra is that they have an actual drum kit. Some orchestras don't, but that's a fairly common sight for orchestras nowadays.
Yeah,
so
this particular orchestra was very willing to pull out some weirder instruments when it felt the need.
Yeah, we'll get there as well later. But yeah, they didn't have any synths, so they pretty much removed some sounds that were there just for ambience or something, and some synth melodies they replaced with a soft piano in the background. And honestly, to me, that worked so much better. And the strings were so much more on point here. Just a really, really cool rendition, and it made me really, really enjoy the Black Flag main theme, when it traditionally being the game in the franchise with the most theme for me.
Yeah, I will say I felt the horns were overhyped again, but given the bombastic nature of this song, that actually worked out pretty well.
Yeah, like it sells off the pirate adventure.
Yeah. It's funny that the very episode right after we're talking about trumpets is the one where, like, hey, remember how we said horns can blast out if you're not careful? This is kind of one of these moments, though it's a little less blasty than it could be, that's for sure.
I wish I could say that was done on purpose, but nope. I will still take credit. Yeah, I think in this suite, a few of the songs actually have the horns blasting loud in the original mix, because particularly the ones where it's more of a trombone and a French horn, they kind of want that menacing vibe, because you're about to go into combat, and you have these legendary ships you can fight in the game, which are, I think, twice the size of your ship sometimes.
Oh, nice.
So I think there are some bits here where it is as loud as on the original soundtrack, but there are some times where it's louder, but it works. This is not one where I think it necessarily suffers in that front, in my personal opinion. It doesn't necessarily make it better as opposed to the changes with the strings, but I don't think it makes it worse. It's a side grade as opposed to an upgrade or downgrade. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps that Pirates of the Caribbean vibe.
It does. It absolutely does. All right. Well, our next track up is an Amiga medley. And
yeah, I didn't recognize half the songs here.
Yeah.
I only recognized 2 of them, so I didn't recognize 2/3 of it.
Yeah, and one of them also carries that pirate vibe, because some Monkey Island was in there.
Uh-huh. Yep. Hey, guess where I first heard that song? The Monkey Island one.
Was it Video Games Live?
You may notice a recurring theme in this concert. Yes, in fact, it was.
I think it's worth just listing the games because we do have a list given by one of the listeners of the soundtrack. So supposedly the games here are It Came from the Desert, followed by The Secret of Monkey Island, Wings, Flashback, Populous, and Turrican. The person listed it as Turrican 2, but that's one of the songs I recognize. That's definitely the first Turrican. But yeah, those are the games in the Amiga Medley.
Which, hey, that's good information. I've played none of them. I think I may have played a version of Turrican at one point in my life. I think it was a Super Nintendo version of it, but...
Super Turrican was pretty popular.
I've played Super Turrican, and I've played The Secret of Monkey Island, so those are the two I recognize. I think I've played Populous, but the soundtrack didn't stick in my mind, so I didn't recognize the song.
Same here. And it checks out that you'd be less into that, given that the Amiga was more of a European popular thing. So, I mean, though there were ports on other systems, definitely.
For sure. I like the piano in this piece a lot. That pianist is very talented. Once again, not really over the top with it. Like, this pianist is willing to be subtle, but still willing to take the solo bits.
I particularly enjoyed how they added the piano to the Monkey Island theme. Because it's sort of a reggae song. You wouldn't expect a piano there, but it works really, really well. It kind of bridges the gap between reggae and classical, let's say.
Overall, that medley was probably my favorite surprise of the concert, and I enjoyed that. It's not as expected as some of the other tracks, and I like what they did with some of those pieces, especially since very stripped down kind of music lends itself very well to interesting reinterpretations like this one. If you have a simple bass, it's easier to map some other stuff to it.
Yeah. Even though I didn't recognize much of it, this is one of the standout pieces for me, just because it is so, like... There's, like, 6 very different songs kind of stapled together, and they really make it work. Like, compositionally, this is really kind of impressive.
Yeah, this... I'd say this is definitely where the arranger, Andreas Hedlung, really shined.
Yeah.
Because the others... the other arrangements are mostly either... This wasn't an orchestral piece and we're turning it into an orchestral piece, or we're getting songs from the same game or at least the same franchise, so they have similar vibes already.
Mm-hmm.
This is 6 songs with fairly different vibes. Especially Monkey Island really sticks out.
It does.
Yeah,
the reggae vibes.
And yet, if you're not paying attention like I was on my first listen, the transition feels pretty seamless.
Oh yeah. The transitions are just kind of mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm. I will say there was one point, I don't know which song they were playing at the time, but at the 25-minute mark, there was a sequence that was not... Like, it reminded me a lot of FF7's regular battle theme.
Oh yeah, with the, like, string section going very... I would say it's somewhere between the main battle theme and the Overture bombing mission.
Yeah.
That's actually the beginning of the Turrican track.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I have it on my notes. That's the one I know the name of the song. That's Shoot or Die from the original Turrican.
Now, we're not saying that Turrican is basically what inspired Final Fantasy VII Full Sail, but no.
We're going to have this conversation later as well, I think.
No, we won't.
We won't? Okay.
We might. We'll see. Let's put a pin on that just in case.
I don't know enough Turrican to stand by that joke anymore than I did.
Fair enough. But I was very impressed with the Turrican track actually, because I'm used to an official album by Chris Husbach, the composer for the Turrican franchise.
Oh.
Where he released, I think, actually a couple albums. It was an anthology project where he had his own arrangements for the songs. And of course, as the original composer, he arranged in the style he aimed them to be listened in originally. So it's more of an electronic thing with a guitar here and there. Completely different from your traditional symphony orchestra.
Yeah.
So it was very, very neat to listen to it in a very different context from the original and have it still work really well.
So we can move on then to another suite, the Final Fantasy IX one.
This one of two suites not arranged by Andreas Hedlund. This is credited to Nils-Petter Ankarblom, I think that's how it's pronounced.
Ah. So that explains why this is one that I actually like a lot less. So first and foremost, I had this call out from before, but I'm going to call it out again. They misspelled Nobuo Uematsu's name.
Yep.
That is unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. They spelled it Nobou, not UO.
Nobuo Uematsu, apparently.
Apparently, he's a overrated Japanese restaurant now. Good for him? ?
Can't say I'm familiar. I do wonder whether that's on the orchestra or on the TV station.
That feels like the editor. Like, I can't imagine very many Swedish TV broadcast operators knowing how to spell Japanese transliteration. Like, this feels like an edit problem.
It's a shame.
Yeah. This is a really unusual selection of music for this song. Like, I'm very familiar with Final Fantasy IX soundtrack, and I barely recognized any of the music going on here except a bit of Vivi's theme towards the beginning. And then part of the opening movie scroll, which this may be the entire just opening movie scroll in score mode, but that feels like a really weird choice of music to pick from FF9.
Yeah, like, there's plenty of possibilities for something that's really playing to the strength of that orchestra that they've shown in the previous tracks, and maybe they wanted to change it up as part of the selection, but they went for some more calmer songs in that medley, and as a result it kind of fails to stand out in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no prior experience with the FF9 soundtrack, so this was kind of entirely new to me.
Right.
And it really felt like not necessarily bad, but definitely the weakest point of the set for me personally. I really don't remember anything from this.
There's one song I like less than this, but we'll get to that fairly soon. This particular one, I agree with you. This one's just compositionally kind of weak. It's a mishmash in some, like, really indistinct ways.
It's it's pleasant to listen to, but not memorable at all. And it's there. The orchestra did their job fine.
Yeah. I mean, I have nothing but positive things to say about the performers. Like, they are all excellent and professional and very good at their job.
That they are. But they are.
Like, I listened to this whole thing, and I'm like, there isn't a weak player among them. This is a top-notch orchestra. Great.
I mean, the National Symphonic Orchestra for a reason.
I don't know. I've heard the Hungary Symphony Orchestra, and they are not ideal. They're a pretty weak symphony orchestra, so, you know.
Fair enough. Well, if that arrangement makes our heads go empty that much, let's move on to The Last of Us.
Just a pause real quick. Because that's the Swedish Radio Symphony Orchestra. The actual national orchestra is a different one. The National Orchestra of Sweden is called the Gothenburg Symphony Orchestra. And they also have the Royal Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra. There's a lot of orchestras in Sweden.
Good on them. But yeah, no, that was a good correction, my bad.
That's not going to be a pause. We are going to leave that in.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep. Next we have The Last of Us. I am not a fan of this franchise, and I am not a fan of this song. That said, if you ask me to tell you anything specific about it, I can't. I listened to it twice, and I don't remember a single note.
Yeah, it's... The Last of Us soundtrack, for the most part, is subtle in the way I remember a friend of mine saying that the tea she served had some very subtle notes, and that was because she forgot the tea bag. So it was just hot water.
Okay.
That is a great analogy. I love that. I've done that with a coffee machine. I've forgotten to load coffee, and I'm like, this doesn't taste right.
It's a bit more
right,
visible.
That's white water.
Why does it look so clean?
And it was supposed to be white tea.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, I like the cello here. I can say that much. But it's definitely a continuation of the low point of the concert.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not going to continue that much further, that's for sure, but right now it's definitely more of a... let's say the calm end of early part of the concert.
Yes. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add about Last of Us. I'm sorry. I really wish I could say something, but I'm just like, I have nothing to add here.
So, would you say that your thoughts and reflections are all gone, no escape?
All gone, no sure?
That's the name of the track.
Ah. Got it. Yeah, this is... I didn't get that because I...
Wait.
Okay.
Actually, because we are on Discord and we have the possibility now to have a soundboard...
You're stealing my job, but thank you.
Discord is stealing your job. I am employing the job-stealing ways. So I'm not stealing, I'm picket crossing.
Oh no. So yeah, the WGA is on strike right now, and I'm very much on the side of the strikers because, oh man. But
Yep.
yeah, that's a timely joke. That's, oh god.
Indeed.
Oh, that one hurt me. That one got me right in the soul.
Oh, trust me, it hurts more to say.
I believe you. God.
I feel like I'm just caught in the crossfire. I want to have nothing to do with this.
Good for you.
That's
for
very
you.
safe.
Let's just say my working situation going forward is going to get very dodgy until the strike resolves.
I can imagine.
Anyways, on the subject of dodgy, it's a me, Mario! I can't do that accent for the life of me, but I'm still probably better than Chris Pine. Or was it Pratt? Which Chris was it?
Pratt.
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 I knew it was one of the Chris's.
Too many Chris's in Hollywood.
There's a lot of Chris's.
Mario!
Much better. That's a much better one.
Thank you. I went to Italy once.
Nice.
Hey, you went to Brooklyn once, I'm pretty sure, so...
I've been to Brooklyn. I was born in Brooklyn. Actually, no, I was born in Manhattan, but I lived in Brooklyn growing up.
Yeah. So, you're more the movie Mario, and I'm more the Nintendo 64 Mario that's a bit glitchy.
That's very fair. I'll take that. You know, it was actually funny. Someone clocked, like, I try very hard to make my New York accent go away. Someone actually clocked it in an Uber not too long ago, and I was like, wow, you have good ears that you can hear that.
Wow.
Through, like, 30 years of me trying to get rid of it.
I'm gonna be honest, that beats me, considering my natural accent was actually very Americanized because of how much time I spent on the internet, where someone once asked me, "You're not from here, are you?" When I was speaking in my natural accent in the city I have been living for my entire life. And I've only left for business/educational reasons, so only a couple days at a time at most. Mm-hmm. Not enough to change my accent, but I've apparently been online too much.
I don't want to say that's a good thing, but I also can't say it's a bad thing.
It's an amusing thing.
It is an amusing thing. We'll call it that. Anyways, Mario.
Yes.
I have very mixed opinions about this song, to be perfectly honest, this particular performance.
It certainly does a lot.
It does a lot. Like, I like a lot of what they play. They play some, like, weirder stuff. Like, there's a couple of things from World in there. The Super Mario World theme works very well as a waltz. I think that was a very interesting trick.
Yeah, but at the same time, I definitely have to admit that we talked about how some transitions were seamless before. That isn't really the case here, and
no.
The task of going from Mario Galaxy kind of theme to reinterpretation of a 1986 game is definitely more complicated.
Yeah.
And I don't think they went as subtly as they could have. Maybe if they picked a more unifying theme by trimming a few of the tracks here and there, they could have done a subtler job, but the result, while not bad by any means, is definitely...
It's a bit jarring, and it is extremely cheesy.
Yes. It's very much, hey, we're out of the very low-down subtle part now.
Yeah. But they get some, interesting songs in here as well. Like, the SMB3 Fortress gets in here, and then a P-Switch gets hit. And I'm just like, wow, they included that. That's actually really cool. It's silly, but it's really cool. But it's silly, but it's really cool.
I kind of felt like the cheesiness was part of the charm for this one. The transitions sometimes were a bit wonky, but I had a ton of fun with this one. One transition in particular that it clearly got a reaction from the crowd, and I think it would have gotten a reaction from me if I was there as well, was when they had some very elaborate pieces on the first half of the suite. A lot of Mario Galaxy stuff, a lot of Mario World arrangements that were very elaborate arrangements. And then there's a couple seconds of silence, and suddenly the very classic dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, like nothing to smooth it out. Just suddenly the underground theme, the crowd chuckles, and honestly, I would have chuckled there myself.
It was a pretty serious transition.
Speaking of pretty serious, I really liked how menacing they made the Bowser's theme part.
Yeah.
That was just really ominous, and it almost felt like it would slip in nicely to the next track.
Honestly, before we go to the next track, I just want to shout out...
Yeah, no, that wasn't a transition, to be clear.
There were two waltzes here. Galen mentioned already their take on the Super Mario World over World theme. And there was also the aquatic theme from the original Mario Brothers. And like, as I grow older, I just fall more and more in love with waltzes. I love that stuff.
3/4 time is underrated. People don't do it enough.
3/4 and 6/4 are just chef's kiss.
6/4 is a weird one. 6/8 is more common, which is basically just 3/4 with different brain power usage, but
it's 3/4 with extra steps.
It is, but that's a feature, not a bug, unfortunately. It's music, not math.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm finding that even in video game music, waltzes are just really the sort of stuff that I'm enjoying more and more with time. Between the aquatic theme from Mario Brothers and not present in this concert, but as another kind of waltz-esque theme, the Carattere theme from the original Metroid is also that one's on 6/4, if I recall correctly. Also a theme I love. So that rhythm is just something I'm growing to enjoy more and more as time goes by, and we had 2 of those in this medley, so I love that.
And then it goes into the classic Mario main music, the Mario 1 level theme. I actually really didn't like this part. I thought it was just the cheese factor got too much at this point. I'm just like, this orchestra's overdoing it. I'm glad they're having fun, but I have the same reaction to this that I have to like the orchestral arrangements of the Chocobo theme in Final Fantasy. It's just like, it's too much. It's too much.
I think that was, if not the only point, then at least the main point in the concert where I thought they just added that because they would have gotten flack if they didn't. Because they didn't need to go to the Mario 1 overworld theme. They could have ended prior to that, and it would have been a really solid medley. It felt tacked on at the end.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Yeah, it was definitely a bit of a, hey, remember, it's video game song from the video game.
Yeah.
It's either that or we know you're gonna eat us alive if we don't play this, so here it is.
It's a him, Mr. Video Gamer Man.
Pretty much. Yeah, no, that sums it up. That sums it up nicely. I don't know. I feel like on a this was definitely one of the more technically interesting songs, but on a personal level was one I liked the least. It was kind of down there for me.
Yeah, I was very, very interested in the things they did to the Mario 3 and Mario World soundtracks. So I was very entertained, but they didn't quite stick the landing, is how I would describe my take on this one.
And then, holy mood whiplash, Batman. We go straight from the fun, whimsical world of Mario to Bloodborne.
I want to shout out the visuals on this one.
Oh yeah, they ramped up the lights.
We're talking about a traditional orchestra setting.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't those big flashy screens you see at video games live. There's just a lot of moody red lights, and the singer comes back. She's in a blood red dress, and she's being lit entirely from the back, making her look extremely menacing as she's the environment behind her is bathed in blood red lights, and it's glorious.
Yeah. This singer is really good. I like her a lot.
Yes.
She brings an energy to this song that's great. I just greatly object to its placement in the concert.
It's a weird placement.
I would have liked to have seen this and our following song swap places. I think that would have been a better, rise and falling action.
That would have worked. Maybe this with spoilers, the Zelda suite might have also worked a bit.
I would swap better. Bloodborne and Mega Man. So I would go Mario, Mega Man, Bloodborne, Zelda, Skyrim.
Yeah, but then we'd have followed from Mega Man to Bloodborne.
That's not as bad because the Mega Man, we'll get to there, but the Mega Man I felt was a lot more tense, so it wouldn't have felt as jarring. It would have felt like it was leading into
Which is a weird thing to say, you gotta admit.
It is a weird thing to say, I will admit, but the arrangement there kind of sells it for me. But yeah, in terms of the song itself, this one's wild. They really played it hard.
This switch at first kind of caught me a little bit off guard because I'm used to the album version of the Nights on Furrows, which is the first song in the suite.
Yeah.
Where the vocals are much, much higher. So I was kind of hesitant. Like, I was thinking, can she just not go that high? But no, that was just a choice on their part.
Yep.
And even if I'm more used to the original version of that track, the suite in general is just very, very good, and the singer really, really shines here.
Yeah, she really helps herself and tied together that piece to give it a haunting quality that is perfect for the game the tracks are arranged from.
Yeah. And frankly, she, I'm kind of skipping to the end here, but when the song was over, she actually looked very relieved. Like, this is an incredibly technically challenging song, like, for a singer. She had to hit some giant notes.
Yeah.
And,
Monstrous one, you could even say.
But yeah, even spoiling a little bit of the later parts of the concert, it's I think it's fair to say that she seems at home in a soprano range.
Yes.
Based on the final track of the concert. But even then, like, she had to exert herself to reach the high notes on this one. And she did them well. Like,
Yes.
Don't let it be come off as if I'm saying she had to force it for it to come out. Like, it came out beautifully.
No, she is very clearly a
was just
traditional operatic soprano. Like, that is absolutely what she does for a living.
And she definitely hit those notes perfectly here. It's just physically she was clearly a bit out of her comfort zone, but not out of her skill set. I think that's a way of putting it.
Yeah. No argument there.
Yeah, she could do it, and she did do it, but it wasn't going to be easy.
Yeah.
Not with the intensity and not with the notes. Like, not a chance, but she did it, and she did great.
Honestly, I wish this concert was on an album, because I would put that song on my my gothic ambience playlist.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to say your workout playlist.
Okay, let's be honest here. Eddie's workout playlist is a playlist for Mad Men, okay? Let's just be clear about this.
Yes. He has at least 6 in sight when he's working out.
I do have an average of about 160 BPM on my workout playlist, yes.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah,
one of these days I'm gonna try to work out to the Bloodborne soundtrack just to tell you what it's like.
Please don't hurt yourself.
Please don't hurt others.
That too. If I hear that you've been in the gym combat rolling and backstabbing, I'm going to be very annoyed at you.
I'm going to give you the frowny eyes if you murder people.
God.
Yeah, my only complaint about this song as a whole is its placement. I think just putting it right after Mario was a mistake.
Yeah, I think something
the mood whiplash is a little too hard. It smacked me in the face.
Yeah, and something we were discussing prior to recording, there are different editions of this concert, and we managed to find the track listing. It's possible they were experimenting here. These doesn't seem to have been the first time they've played, but it might have, because we don't have records of a tour in 2016. Even though the next tour is listed as number 2 in their URL for some reason, and that was for 2017-2018. So maybe this was promotional for that tour and they were figuring out the set list.
That's very possible.
The other option is maybe this is how the first edition of this project was like, and they have been adapting and improving the set list over time. It's really hard to tell. Again, most information is either only in Swedish or has been straight up deleted from the internet.
Yeah, a lot of this is just speculation on our part. We are not insiders here.
And it doesn't help that the concerts they play are only available on their website apparently for a limited time, which would have helped with finding more information.
That said, this particular show has been on the internet for 7 years and has not left YouTube, so they don't seem to be all that quick on the draw when it comes to copyright. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen at some point, but for the time being, this one feels relatively safe.
They survived about 2.5 million views.
Yeah.
That being said, if you're listening to this podcast, go check the concert as soon as we're over, because we cannot promise it will be there forever.
Correct.
Exactly. It could be over in a flash. Flashman theme. That's my transition. Take it or leave it.
We'll take it. So once again, we're back to something that is done far, far, far better than Video Games Live. We're back. This was a cool mix. I like this arrangement quite a bit.
The transitions here worked better than on the Mario Suite. The Mega Man Suite was one of the highlights of the concert for me.
Yeah.
It was very cool.
Yeah, and the pieces they've taken, it definitely had the All-Stars. It had You by This Castle too, of course, but it also had a few deeper cuts, which I appreciate.
Yeah, that's something that this arranger has been very good about.
Yeah, the games involved are for the most part extremely popular ones.
Right. There aren't really that many
within
surprises here except maybe FF9.
And the Amiga Medley. But within those extremely expected games, the track selection, he doesn't hesitate to take a lesser-known track if it can help a transition.
Right.
For instance.
I mean, even going back to the top of the concert, the Assassin's Creed 4 suite, if it was Video Games Live, they would have just played the main theme.
That's basically what they did do in Video Games Live.
Yeah.
I can confirm that.
Yeah, exactly. And here they do use the main theme as a bookend to a suite of themes from the game. Some very interesting choices in the arrangement.
Which, again, leads me to kind of shout out how good Andreas Hedlund is, because this guy is doing some very cool work and doing it in a way that I greatly respect with these arrangements. He's not just pulling the obvious choices. He's not just going okay, video game music, go. He's actually taking, you can sense a real appreciation for the art here. Which as someone who...
Honestly, that's a perfect segue to a point I wanted to bring up. I will go more into the interview at the end of the conversation, but there's an interview before the concert in this TV airing where they interview a trombonist from the orchestra. And a couple things jump to my mind in that interview. They're pretty relevant, particularly here in the Mega Man suite. One of them is that simply the guy straight up says he wasn't into video game music. He wasn't into video games. But he loved doing that. He found a huge appreciation for it, which, like I said earlier, the entire orchestra and the conductor, from time to time, the camera zooms in on them, and they're smiling. They're having the time of their life playing these songs. And that's even in spite of a comment this trombonist, he goes by, I didn't look this pronunciation up in advance. This is gonna come back to bite me. Hakan Bjorkman, I think that's how it's pronounced, I hope.
Okay.
He mentions how, in response to a question on whether this concert was particularly complicated for him as a musician, he notes that the Mega Man suite was pretty hard because it's very loud. It's a lot of brass.
Yeah.
And fairly fast. So he required a lot of stamina, and like I cannot praise these guys enough, because you cannot tell by listening to this.
No, they're extremely professional. And it's funny because, like, as a counterpoint, I go to Distant Worlds a lot. That's not new information. I'm a giant fanboy for Final Fantasy music live, especially live.
Correct.
I have seen them hired, like, symphonies and even the smaller A New World, the chamber orchestras, where several of the players just look, like, bored or just pure intent, like, I have to play notes now. There isn't that sense of fun or enjoying their time there, and the fact that this trombonist is saying, like, I wasn't even familiar with the music and I love what I'm playing, again, kind of speaks to the quality of the, it speaks to the quality of the composition, of the arrangements, which I think...
Yeah, like, overall I have a feel that the arranger and everyone involved looked at the tracks available, going deep into the soundtrack and see what can I do with that, with those tracks, with that music, and not, okay, let's do the video game thing.
Yeah, this comes from a love of music, which...
Yes.
God, I'm so glad we're getting, like, orchestral arrangements and orchestral participation that actually recognizes video game music as music, because that has been a real struggle for recognition.
Yeah, and that feels 100% like a goal of that whole orchestra and that whole concert.
Yeah.
To have something aired on national television that says, here is some video game music, it's good music, it works with an orchestra, so there you go.
Yeah, and it's
I bemoaned a little bit earlier the lack of an album out of this, but I think that is part of why it's so interesting, because if you are making an orchestral arrangement to be released as an album, that is your objective.
Mm-hmm.
You are gonna make some decisions for commercial purposes. You're gonna go for the hard hitters. Here, I cannot say how much money they earn from this or how much their finances depended on this concert, but it feels like they were financially comfortable, let's say, enough where they could take risks. And those risks paid off, in my opinion.
And it just, once again, lays bare, like, you know, there's a Mega Man rendition in Video Games Live, and I have to compare them directly because that's basically what this concert has invited me to do. And it just goes to show how, especially in retrospect, how mercenary Video Games Live is. It's like, we're going to play these songs for the fans, that's it, that's our job, let's go. Again, and this one comes from a love of the music, which it's very clear to me now that Tommy Tallarico just never possessed. He's just in it for the ego, which, shocker, right?
It's funny because you'd think in a comparison point between here is video game loving people that make a concert and here is an orchestra that happens to play video game music that one time. You'd think the latter would be the more cynical side of it.
Right?
But that's not necessarily the case. it's like they looked at it and gave it respect.
Yeah.
On top of popularizing it and kind of
like
airing it around on public television as just a good concert.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's just, compare 100% directly the two songs that definitely appeared in both, and that is Wily's Castle 2, which you brought up. Both of them featured this song in their medleys for Mega Man. But again, the Video Games Live one was extremely on the nose, whereas this one was a lot more subtle, had a lot more intricacy in both the composition and the performance. And it comes across
because it knows that an orchestra isn't 8-bit.
So this one comes off a million times better as a result. God, I love Wily's 2 on this one. It's always been a standout song of the franchise, but hearing it performed with this much love behind it, man, it feels good. It feels good.
Mega Man, it feels good. Hey.
Boo.
But
where's that soundboard again?
No, don't you do it.
But terrible joke aside, on top of the way to which I fully expected, because of course you're going to do that, I mentioned Flashman for a reason, and that's because it definitely stood out a little as a way to kind of bring the tempo up and keep it up after it.
Yeah. That is one of the more popular songs for Mega Man, but at the same time, I've almost never heard people talk about it, right?
Yeah.
It shows up on a lot of lists, but it doesn't often show up on a lot of actual,
I think one of its issue is that it's part of Mega Man 2's soundtrack, and Mega Man 2's soundtrack is stacked.
It is a very stacked.
Yeah, it's hard to shine in that soundtrack.
It is. Well, I mean, it's Flashman, so if anyone's going to shine, it'd be him. I cannot believe I just said that. Ran, I blame you for this.
I would have done it if you didn't.
I know, that's the worst part.
But I didn't
even realize the opportunity for a pun, and apparently I've been Rana for so long that I make puns unconsciously now.
No, here's the thing. Do you know why I didn't make that joke? Because I was busy checking if Shine Man was a thing, which it isn't, but ShiningMine.exe is.
Yep, I remember that guy.
So I overthought it. Thank you for bringing us back to Earth. Anyway, it's good.
So from one classic to another, and one that, it put a smile on my face, to one that damn near made me fall out of my chair. It was so good. I am
that much, huh?
Yeah, I am genuinely shocked at how good this Zelda mix is.
I find that interesting because the other suite that you thought was very meh, the Final Fantasy IX one, that's the other song by the same arranger, Nils-Petter Ankarblom, or however his name is.
Now I'm just confused, because FF9 I didn't like at all, but this is one of my two favorites in the entire concert. I absolutely adore this one. So
it definitely does that thing we've mentioned already of going for tracks beyond the most obvious and just making them work really well together in one cohesive whole.
It was kind of bold to start with the Link to the Past intro screen.
Yes.
That's not a song I thought I would hear.
Yeah, incidentally, shout out to the actual start of this song. I couldn't obviously understand most words in Swedish, but there seemed to be a joke there about how you can't play Zelda without an ocarina, and they thankfully found out one of their flautists had an ocarina.
Yeah, they actually had an ocarina player, and I was really happy about that. Again, it's one of those things where...
No finish, and then I'll circle back to something I wanted to say before.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they're not afraid to bring in weirder instruments when the time is right. They had the drum kit for some tracks. They had, a really good marimba section in Super Mario World, which I didn't get a chance to talk about at the time. And then they have an ocarina for Zelda, which is very on the nose, but also very cool that they had that.
Very on the nose, though.
I mean, it is, but...
Might as well, honestly. And to come back to what I wanted to say about opening that Zelda section, like, yeah, no, you don't open with the A Link to the Past opening. That's not what you do. You either go Zelda 1 or you go Ocarina of Time. That's how it's supposed to work.
Isn't that right, Tommy?
But clearly they looked at the playbook and were like, it's more a set of suggestion, thus proving again the Pirates of the Caribbean inspiration. It's more of a set of guidelines.
More of a set of guidelines, yeah. So we go from the opening of Link to the Past into Zelda 64's Ocarina of Time, Hyrule Field, and I'm just like, well, this is a wild choice. I kind of dig it. They played basically the entire thing, which is, that's a long song.
Takes a whole in-game day.
It does. And it just sounds just great. Like, they were really... Again, the composition was just really into it. They stick with Ocarina for a while, and this is the part coming up next where I almost fell out of my chair. I heard the opening notes to Hyrule Castle from Link to the Past. I didn't think I would ever get to hear this in a concert setting. People ignore this song so hard, despite it being so good.
Yes. Like, they basically had in the 3DS sequel to make their own reference to that song because nobody else would.
Uh-huh.
And that apparently a Swedish orchestra did. Yeah, I mean, as someone whose childhood was more A Link to the Past than Ocarina of Time,
yeah,
yes, I appreciate it, will I say in an understatement.
Yeah. And interestingly, they actually kind of converted into a rising action violin concerto. Because this was the one where they actually had the lead violinist, and I wish I got this woman's name because she has a great stage presence. But she carried this version of the song, and it's just such a unique take on a song that doesn't get unique takes about it at all, ever. So I'm just like...
And should.
It really should, yes. So I owe it to this concert to really kind of just throw it all at the wall and just go for it. And it makes it even better than just playing the song straight would have been. Just acknowledging the song is one thing, but they take it to that next level, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Again, it's got that feeling of taking an actual look at the entirety of the soundtrack and not just the most obvious part. Like, of course, they're not going to skimp on them, on what is expected, but they do that additional step that's... Honestly, I'm going to put part of my conclusion in here, that way it's done. When I looked at the track selection, I was genuinely worried I was going to get bored, because it's like, yeah, okay, there's the Mario and the Zelda and the Skyrim and the Final Fantasy and
yeah, it's...
But like the selection of the games to play is very expected, but they go a bit deeper in the tank than what the selection would suggest, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, they really made some very cool choices here. And Hyrule Castle is definitely one of like the huge standouts for me. I mean, for all the reasons we just discussed, and I'm just like, this made me feel things. I had emotions. I was not expecting emotions. At least at this point in the concert. There's a story I will tell.
Where's the emotions you provided, Tommy?
Right? There is... I will be talking about the finale later, and that's another case where I got fairly emotional, but not when I listened to it this time around, and we'll talk about that Actually, in Skyrim is when that story is going to start. But for Zelda here, like, okay, we have this absolutely out-of-this-world take on Link to the Past Hyrule Castle theme, which I can't love enough. And then we take that into the Zelda 1 dungeon theme, which, man, this is a theme that I'm usually kind of bored with. This is one of my, like, lower down there on Zelda music for the tier.
Yeah, because it's like a 20-second loop.
Yeah, but they managed to knock this out of the park. I was actually super shocked at that, too. I'm like, oh, wait, this is actually, like, incredible? What's going on here? I love this.
The fun part with short loops is that you can have fun with the variations.
Yeah.
And I'm used to seeing that kind of fun happen to, like, a remake version of a game where you take that loop and you extrude it into a full song, sort of.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what they did. Maybe not the full way, but they went like 80% of the way, and for an independent concert, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I mean, there's a part of me that's like, I want to see what these guys would do with, like, Majora's Mask, or like maybe something a little wilder like Lorule Castle from Link Between Worlds or something like that. But on the other hand, I don't want to second guess their picks. They did great, even if they do wrap it up with like the main Zelda theme we all know and love. But like at this point, fine. Like, sure, get your classics in. I'm not going to argue with this at all. You played the deeper cuts, play your big hits. I don't mind this. It's when you go Camelot Syndrome and only play the big hits that I get annoyed. They didn't do that here. So play some big hits. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to say this is somehow a bad decision.
I was going to object that maybe they couldn't have done the A Link Between Worlds track because it was just not released already. But then I checked the date and that game is 10 years old, and now I'm turning into that.
I turn 40 next week. 40! I'm going to turn 40, I think, before this episode actually releases to YouTube and Spotify.
Yeah. November 22nd, 2013. A Link Between Worlds. That was 10 years ago.
You know,
I hate it here. I'm feeling emotions alright, but they're not intended by the concert.
Fair.
Something I enjoy about this podcast is that you guys make me feel young, because I'm only 30.
Oh, God.
On most Discord servers, I mean, saying I'm 30 means I'm a grandpa.
Yeah, you're hanging around with the old fogies. What are you doing, youngin'?
Get off my lawn.
I was waiting for that. To go back to Zelda, though,
yeah.
I don't have as much of an emotional connection with the franchise. I think I'm gonna have to turn my nerd card on because I'm not a huge Zelda fan, never have been. But it was really fun to listen to some tracks that aren't just the big ones from Ocarina of Time and the original Zelda theme.
Yeah. Like,
it's a landmark game with a landmark soundtrack for a reason.
Yeah.
But
there's only so much you can hear the same thing over and over again before you lose interest in it. That's honestly, at this point, my biggest complaint with One Winged Angel is like, when you actually listen to the song, I've heard it so many gajillions of times that it's lost all impact.
Yeah. Unless you do something interesting with it.
Right, and in this case, they weren't afraid to do things interesting, even if they did play kind of a straight version of the good old-fashioned Zelda theme at the end, but again, by that point, you've kind of earned it, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. They earn it, and then they get their conclusions. It's like a victory lap. It works.
It works.
Especially with a Zelda theme.
Yeah. Yeah. This was one of my favorite 2 tracks of the entire show. It was just so well done, especially for someone who is a Zelda fan, who recognized some of the deeper stuff on here that I'm just like, wow, this makes me so happy it hurts. Like, this is such a big smile on my face.
Yeah, like, being a Zelda fan makes you appreciate it more because Zelda is more than 2 games.
Yeah, as it turns out.
Yeah, whether those games are Ocarina of Time and the first Zelda, or whether those 2 games are Breath of the Wild and now Tears of the Kingdom, there is more than 2 games in that franchise, people.
Mm-hmm. And now we go to a game where it's apparently only one game in a 5-game franchise.
Yep.
Man.
Although, for that, they also went with an interesting take.
They did.
This seems to have been based on a YouTuber, interestingly.
Indeed, Maluka.
Yeah, for Skyrim, the Dragonborn comes. That's actually just... The Dragonborn comes is actually just a song that's sung by bards at the in-game inns.
Oh.
And the actual in-game version of the song is just vocals, and it's pretty much just the first part of the vocals sung here. But this YouTuber, Maluka, she's a Mexican singer. She kind of made a new take, turning that into a full song, and sort of a folky thing with some reverb that makes it sound a bit like Enya at times. Her voice reminds me a bit of Enya's voice as well. And she mixed it with the Elder Scrolls main theme melody, which is why it's exactly what they did on the concert here. They mixed the Dragonborn Comes thing with the Elder Scrolls theme. And just as an aside, a quick fun fact, Maluka, she kind of went viral when she released that cover, to the point where ZeniMax and Bethesda took note and hired her for a few songs that play at inns in Elder Scrolls Online. So shout out to her.
Oh, that's really cool. I usually don't have something positive to say about Bethesda or ZeniMax, but in this particular case, big thumbs up there. That's actually really cool.
Yes.
And yeah, so it seems like the arranger here was inspired by her. It is credited to Andreas Hedlund, as most tracks here are, but it does feel like they were very much inspired by this particular take.
Well, they also did credit Maluk. I think that's who the credit is on this video. I did see that.
It's on the video description anyway, but the video isn't an official upload.
Imagine crediting your inspirations, Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy. Imagine that.
Yeah, but
this whole...
It doesn't sound hard to me, though, Tommy.
Sorry, I keep coming back to this because it keeps being relevant.
It's funny.
I'm gonna have to title this episode Score Better Than Video Games Live, aren't I?
Kind of.
Or just look at what the Swedes are doing, Tommy.
So a couple of things to note on my end. Sabina Zweiacker returns, this time wearing a white dress. And this is a white dress I'm actually very familiar with. I'm like, oh, that's this concert. Okay, we'll get to that later. But this is where I'm like, oh, she changed it to something I recognize now. We'll talk about why I recognize it. This is also the one song that I don't actually like her on. And I'll explain why, and it's actually very simple. She's singing apparently in English and does not sound like she's singing in English. Her performance reminds me in no uncertain terms of Tarja Turunen's performance in Nightwish, which is to say English is clearly not a language she grasps, like, closely. I'm fairly certain she was given the words phonetically.
Couldn't be me.
I think it's a mix, because the song starts in English as the bard song, the Dragonborn Comes.
Right.
And then it goes into a vocal solo version of the title theme for Skyrim, which in Skyrim it's sung by a choir, which it's meant to sound like a Viking chant or something. And they sing it in the dragon tongue from the game.
Got it.
And then it goes into just melody. That's how it goes in this version.
One other thing that kind of bothers me is that it's, I believe, the shorter part of the concert, the shorter single track of the concert, short of the medleys, of course.
Are you sure? Because I think Last of Us was also pretty short.
Possibly. It's on the shorter side compared
they're
to
both
like
down
the
there, that's for
15-minute
sure.
Zelda medley. but it felt like it was looping in a way that made it feel longer in a way.
Yeah.
Like the refrain is kind of short and repeated a lot.
This kind of goes back into the regardless of the controversy, I just don't think I like Jeremy Soule as a composer situation that happened the last time we talked about Skyrim. I'm not getting anything from this.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, this is my least favorite take on the Elder Scrolls theme. The singer is good, like her voice is still top notch here.
Yeah.
No notes. But the instrumentation part, it doesn't do it for me here either. I do enjoy the versions present in the games, but the thing is, those versions are very much targeted at specific vibes depending on the game.
Right.
That includes Elder Scrolls Online and its expansions, because the title theme for Elder Scrolls Online is a variation on the Elder Scrolls general theme. So, as Kill and I were talking last night, and I mentioned that the vibe I get is that they wanted to have their cake and eat it too with this one, because they kind of brand this as a Skyrim track, and they start with those strong Skyrim vibes by taking the bard song and then taking the bit in the dragon tongue, but then they do a bit which has a lot of brass and seems inspired by the Oblivion version of the Elder Scrolls theme, but in Oblivion they didn't have a live orchestra, so the arrangement wasn't quite the same. The result is that while in Oblivion it sounded majestic and it sounded like it was the theme of the Empire, like almost the anthem of the Empire, because the game setting was the seat of the Empire, the capital city of the Empire. Here, Galen brought it up in the conversation, and I can't get it out of my head. This sounds way more like Pirates of the Caribbean here.
It does. It really does. Now let me tell you what else...
Funny, the main part of that conversation that stuck out to me was the resemblance between that theme and Apocalypsis Noctis.
Yeah, I was actually about to get to that, on the subject of sounding like something else. So there's a point where I was listening to this, and I'm like, wait a minute, this melody sounds familiar, but I'm not overly familiar with Skyrim music, so I'm not sure why it sounds familiar. And I played it back like 3 or 4 times, and I hit pause, and then I realized it was playing in my head, and I'm like, how is that possible? I don't listen to this. And then I just let it play out, and I realized there was more instruments here that wasn't part of this concert. I'm like, okay, this is a different song that I already know. It took me a little bit, but then I realized, wait, it's Apocalypsis Noctis. Why am I listening to Shimomura right now? So I tracked down the studio version, and I can't hear it, really. And then I remember, wait, there's the version from Abbey Road where Shimomura is actually on piano, where for no reason the engineer screws up and cuts out the chorus for the first, minute of the song. So I'm going to listen to that version, and sure enough, there's that melody line. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. How did this happen? Who ripped off who here? It turns out...
Well, as it turns out, that main theme was at least there in Morrowind.
Right, which absolutely
that
predates
came out
15.
before... That not only came out before 15, it probably came out before the very first Versus 13 trailer.
Right, so... While I would be willing to accept if it went the other way, if Shimomura had written this very early on in Versus 13's development, Versus 13 having eventually become 15, it does feel to me as though she may have, gotten inspired by, in the same way that Soka was inspired by When Worlds Collide.
That is such a kind way to say ripoff.
It's totally a ripoff. The melody line is identical.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
I do think, as I mentioned on Discord, I do think, at least if my memory serves well, which I'll be honest, it usually doesn't serve me well, but if it does serve me well this time, Skyrim was the first Elder Scrolls game to hit big in Japan. I remember some magazines giving it top scores even in Japan. and that was the biggest thing in the West for a while.
Yeah.
That, a Western RPG got such big scores in Japan, and that came out in 2011. So my take is that Shimomura isn't really known for plagiarizing or ripping off artists.
She has a massive body of work behind her. Like,
yeah, I'd say it's probably like this was in the zeitgeist in Japan, and she added it like unconsciously or something.
That is a very possible reality. I mean, I'm going to be honest here, given her huge body of work and the fact that I would rate Apocalypse Noctis in the top 10 of Shimomura songs, maybe if I'm feeling generous. That says an awful lot about her legacy as a composer, and I can't help but think that this is not disqualifying and almost certainly an accident, because just look at what she's done. I don't think this was deliberately plagiarizing. I really don't. I think this was, as Eddie said, probably she heard it once, thought it was cool.
Yeah, like sometimes you sleep on something, you think of a track, and you're like, oh hey, that's a nice arrangement of notes that came out of the ether.
Yeah, I've done that with my writing. It's happened. So I'm just going to say that while it was shocking, I'm not particularly disappointed or angry about it. Again, it's not like she's got a history of something like this. It kind of feels like an accident to me.
Point being, Jeremy Soule is allowed to rip off Gal's theme once now.
Oh, God.
Keep Jeremy's soul away from anything important, please.
Honestly, the fact that you just said that makes me happy that it seems like Bethesda has replaced him with Inon Zur for everything.
He's good. I like Inon Zur.
He's great.
He did very good with Dragon Age Origin.
Yeah, my only criticism of Inon Zur, and this is very off topic and might get cut, my only criticism of his is that his solo album that was not a soundtrack titled Virtuoso, that sounded like a soundtrack. I tried listening to that and I went, this should have been the soundtrack to a Skyrim mod.
So it sounds to me like he just does soundtrack work, and that's just where his brain's at.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool.
At least he's good at it, but it's a shame when he tries to release an album that isn't supposed to be a soundtrack.
Yeah. Anyway, since we've gone on these gigantic tangents about this song, I think it's fair to say that I don't actually have much to say about this song, other than this is Svajaker's weakest performance of the night, almost entirely because of her pronunciation of English. And this, I just don't like Jeremy Soule's work. I just don't think this is all that interesting.
Yep.
And I just think this is the least interesting version of the Elder Scrolls theme out of all of them. And there's a lot.
I appreciate that they took fan work, as a base for this. I really do. But at the end, it's still a Skyrim piece, and I'm sick of Skyrim. I've been sick of Skyrim for 10 years.
That says an awful lot about Skyrim.
And honestly, Maluka's strength is her voice. I don't think her arrangement was particularly interesting, because it does repeat the melody of the Elder Scrolls main theme multiple times. And I guess Andreas Hedlund just he tried experimenting to add some spice to it, because it was repeating that often. But
there's only so much spice can do to a dish.
Yeah. Again, I love Maluka's voice. I love her as a singer, but I don't think that should have been their only basis for this arrangement, if that claim is true.
Yeah.
Now then, let's move on to the other better performance of Savinat Svajaker.
Yeah, I was gonna say, on the flip side, for something that was very well arranged.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, I would like to say, maybe she pronounces Italian even worse than she pronounces English.
It's
However,
possible.
We don't understand Italian,
Yep.
so it works.
Correct. Okay,
We're not
so
Italian, so we don't care.
Okay, so this is...
Sorry, Italy.
This is the opera from Final Fantasy VI. This song in particular...
And not the opera for Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster.
I'm getting to that. No, it is not.
I knew you were.
You knew I was. Because you may remember my great rant about why the hell did you get an alto for this. I compared it to an Italian performance that I didn't realize was this concert. So when I said it was...
That's why you recognize the dress.
Uh-huh.
Yes, the Italian performance was in disguise, and it was actually Swedish.
I actually knew it was a Swedish orchestra at the time. I didn't realize it was this particular concert. I just thought it was the same singer. Maybe she just does a lot of... Yeah. Because at the beginning, remember, she's in a red dress. But, like, when you posted the video, I saw the thumbnail, like, wait, I know that girl. That's the one from the opera. But she's wearing red this time, so maybe it's a different show. Nope, it wasn't. At Skyrim, she changes into the white dress. I'm like, oh, the finale's gonna be good, isn't it? This is actually a piece. This is a performance that I've considered the definitive version of this song for a few years now, despite having not watched the full concert before.
Yeah, it's funny, especially in the context of the rest of the concert, because the arrangements tend to go in interesting directions and kind of add their own ways to do cheeky little transitions and things like that, but this one, it's just, that's the opera. We're going to do the opera. We're going to do it well, and it's going to be the opera, period.
I actually have a bit of a disagreement on that. The opening, the intro before she starts singing is actually very different, and I think it loses some of the intro because of the...
Yes.
Yeah. It loses some of the energy, not much, certainly not enough to be disqualifying, because of that modification. However, once Sabina starts singing... Words are hard. Once Sabina starts singing, she basically just owns the room. And as I said, I recognized this from years ago. Like, I've been listening to this version of the track for years now. I mentioned once upon a time that I worked on a weirdo crossover fan game where I was also doing the music. I had planned on putting this version into that game, not knowing anything else about it. Even back then, and that was like 5 years ago when I was still working on that. I haven't worked on that since pre-pandemic.
Oh.
So, like, this kind of just goes to show how much reach this concert actually has to music aficionados. And I really regret not having heard of it before. By comparison, the Distant Worlds version of this usually sings it in English, and while it's great live, it's very silly outside of that specific context. I do not like this song in English. I've been pretty open about that, and I've always said I think the definitive version is Italian, and whenever I say that, I'm referring to this exact performance.
Yeah, and I mean, who would have known Italian works well with a song named Aria di Mezzo Carattere?
I mean, let's be honest, it's an Italian opera, admittedly written by a Japanese man, but it's an Italian opera. Like, that's the point.
Yes.
As an aside, I think I will forever cherish the fact that I blindly, as the non-Final Fantasy fan of this podcast, stumbled across Galen's favorite take of a Final Fantasy song.
Yeah. I did not recommend this concert at all. I was surprised. You were the one who picked this one, and here we are.
Yeah, I personally, I've always had a bit of trouble getting into this song. Not this version, just the song in general. Because, for once, I am kind of resistant to opera. Like, I don't usually enjoy operatic stuff. It seems a bit... the vocals are a bit over the top for me most of the time. And also my first impressions of the song were as someone who hadn't played Final Fantasy VI, listening to the Final Fantasy VI version, the original. And the SNES wasn't the best for mimicking human voices.
Right.
But this version is lovely and amazing, and you can see how Sabina is just like at home here.
Yeah.
Doesn't show any signs of effort singing, and she sings masterfully.
Oh yeah. No, as I said, she's very clearly an operatic trained soprano, like period. Like full stop. Yeah, this version of the song is just tremendous. My only complaint is that they changed the intro before she starts singing. And that's also fairly minor because, again, it's one of those things where this composer made this song stand on its own outside of the nostalgia context, which I think is something just about everything except Skyrim and The Last of Us succeeds at for this concert. That it isn't just nostalgia bait. And once again, like, I did see Video Games Live once.
I will bounce off on the fact that, of course, it's not nostalgia bait, and that's going to tie into my conclusion. It's that you can't nostalgia bait people that hear these tracks for the first time.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what this concert is aimed at, as far as I'm concerned.
So, I saw Video Games Live at the Hollywood Bowl when I was a real youngin'. This was before we learned how bad Tommy Tallarico was. And now, I've talked about this before. This was the first time I also heard One Winged Angel live. Because they somehow got the rights to the track at that point in time and were able to play it live. And let's be honest here, that's a very on-the-nose pick, which, again, just kind of speaks to the mercenary nature, no matter how transformative hearing that live for the first time was at the time. In retrospect, I understand that it's like, well, this is the most popular song for the franchise, we're going to play this. I'm not arguing with that choice. Like, Distant World still does this. They are also fairly allergic to deeper cuts.
Yes.
The thing is, the opera is like, that's one of those songs that you really only know if you're a Final Fantasy fan. And if you're a Final Fantasy fan, usually it's a favorite because it's that good, but you really only know it in that instance. So it is almost, by its nature, a nostalgia bait song. But as you said, despite being, like, you can't be nostalgia bait for someone who has heard it for the first time, and, like, you're the one who said this, Randa, it feels like a lot of this concert was geared towards that audience instead of the traditional gaming audience.
That it is.
And I think that makes such a big difference because, like, again, this version of the song is incredible, but it's also a very interesting pick. And there's a part of me is like, we have this amazing singer, let's put her to work.
Yeah, like, here's the thing. If this concert was full in on the nostalgia bait, they wouldn't have done just this part, because that's a 4-part opera, and that's just the last part.
Yeah.
Or the second to last?
No, it's the second part. Because you have the intro with Draco getting run over by chocobos. That always makes me laugh.
Yes.
You have the musical interlude. You have this part.
With the waltz.
I'm sorry?
The waltz part.
Yes, you have the waltz. That's the third part. And then the waltz gets interrupted by Ultros and everything else happening. And then you have that fourth, like, big, bombastic, I love this part. And then you have the fifth part, which is, all right, we're improvising, play some boss music. They play the appropriately named finale, which is a great boss theme, which, man. But yeah, no, they played the important part of the song. This is the part that the FF6 fans in the audience are going to know and remember. This is the big one. Everything else is a little less well known, even if it is greatly appreciated.
Yes. Although it is 4 parts only on the official soundtrack CD that I have in my hand right now.
I think Finale is considered a different song, because that's more Ultros' boss theme than part of the...
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it is part of the opera paragraph. So it is considered a part of the opera as a whole.
Okay, so then I feel like they probably combined parts 1 and 2, so they had the short
No,
intro.
they combined parts 3 and 4.
Oh,
The
okay.
wedding waltz and the duel are considered a single track.
Okay, fair. Fair enough. But that's just, like, where you're slicing the track. That's sort of an editing decision. It's not really a, like, how big is this thing decision. It is big. There's one thing FF6 did right. It's big songs.
That it did.
And it doesn't get much bigger than this one.
It does, and it's called Dancing Mad.
It does. It does. That's the one exception, but that's also, like, there's no individual part of Dancing Mad that hits as hard as this one part of the opera.
Yes.
So if you're going to pick anything from Nostalgia Bait from FF6, this is probably the song to pick. The fact that they picked it at all, especially given the audience, is kind of astounding.
Also, you don't need to have finished the game to have gone to that part.
Correct. The fact that I considered this the definitive version of this song for like 5 years says an awful lot about how powerful it is, and now hearing it in context of the rest of these, frankly, incredible mixes, where your only missteps are The Last of Us, which is a nothing of a song, and Skyrim made some mistakes. And the placement of Bloodborne after Mario, I disagree with, but the actual songs themselves are both great. It just goes to show how powerful this whole thing is at its whole, and how much loving music goes into making a concert experience like this stand out.
Yeah, it really seems like the arrangements were based on giving the entirety of the game soundtrack a good looking into and seeing what can be made with that. And kind of meeting it in the middle instead of just saying, well, we're the concert people, so I guess we're going to do video game stuff for you nerds. No, there's not that condescension to that. That can sometimes happen.
Given that
even though at the heart, it definitely is still a concert for the people that look at, say, a cutscene from The Last of Us and would unironically say that video games have come a long way since Pac-Man.
And I've heard that condescension you're talking about at Distant Worlds. Distant Worlds has had that on occasion.
Of course.
And that's like one of the premier video game concert tours. So, like, the fact that this one manages to avoid that and be so respectful of the material, the audience, and the history really makes this one special. So, Eddie, thank you for picking this one, because I'm glad I got a chance to experience this one in full, even if I had already experienced a part of it and absolutely adore it.
Yeah, this has been a concert that ever since I first listened to, from time to time, YouTube just goes, "Hey, you wanna listen to this again?" How can I say no?
Yeah.
Also, I wanna finish our talk of the concert by addressing the interview at the start.
Please do.
Like I mentioned, before the concert begins, they have an interview. I have no idea what the show is about, but it's some British TV show. And as guests, they have a guy who's described as a game blogger, called Jimmy Wilhelmasson, and they have the trombonist that I mentioned, called, and again, I hope I'm not butchering too much his name, Håkan Björkman. And the trombonist, he speaks a lot to the different vibes that he got from playing this concert versus the usual stuff he plays with the orchestra. And there are a couple things that jumped out to me when he mentions the audience reactions. One of them is that he talks about, assuming the translation we got is correct, he talks about how he loves that the audience actually stands up and claps in between songs. this might not be something that too many people know, since we haven't really talked about classical concerts in this podcast before. But in a classical music concert, it's considered by tradition rude to applaud between pieces. You're meant to applaud at the end, or if they're playing a symphony and the symphony has multiple parts, you are meant to applaud at the end of that symphony when the orchestra gives you a moment to applaud. Like, for some reason, that has become the tradition. It hasn't always been like that. Originally, people would applaud in between songs and in between movements of longer pieces. But nowadays, that's the tradition. And the trombonist, he straight up says he loves that people applaud between songs. He loves that. He wishes we wouldn't have that, honestly, not necessarily his words, but mine, the stupid tradition of not applauding between pieces in a classical concert environment.
There's a lot of elitism in orchestral, in orchestras in general, and the classical music scene. So, like, I'm glad this trombonist is calling that out in a small way, because that's what gives rise to traditions, in air quotes, like this.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear, like, someone is like, I don't actually like this. Like, no, let us have fun.
Yeah, for sure. I love hearing more open-minded musicians like that. It's really a breath of fresh air in an environment that's usually fairly stuck up. And another reaction that jumped to me was closer to the start of the interview, where he mentions that a big reason why the reactions are different is because the target audience for a concert of classical music will include a lot of people who might not really have personal history with that music. Like, they're there for the tradition of enjoying classical music, pretty much. But they're not there for those songs necessarily. Meanwhile, in this concert, of course, he's talking specifically about the people during the live performance, not necessarily those who watched it on TV. But he's saying that the audience there at the concert hall was a much more targeted audience. Those were people who are familiar with these franchises and might have a personal stake on those, might have personal emotional stake on those franchises. Like Galen with the Final Fantasy VI Opera and the Zelda suite, for example.
Yeah.
And he says that a lot of people in the audience would, that personal connection, he talks about how it would result in some different reactions from the crowd than what he's used to. So he says about how people would show audible signs of being the translation used audible signs of well-being. I guess he means audible signs of being pleasantly surprised by something, like, finding something cool, the joy of, it's that song now. And he talks about how some people would almost cry while listening to the song. And,
that was me with Zelda for sure. Like, oh man, they're actually doing some really cool stuff here. My heart is aflutter.
Yeah, and this is where I get personal as well. I think everyone who knows me probably already has gotten kind of an idea that I'm not really an emotional guy, particularly with crying, that sort of stuff. It's never been something I do easily,
right?
And not to go into a sob story, because I hate those, but I do have to state some facts as they are. I do have depression and anxiety disorder. Have had those since I was a child. I am on the autism spectrum, so I have kind of been an outlier since I was a child. And in the country of soccer, I have asthma So ever since I was a child, I was also an outlier in that I couldn't play soccer. My main hobby was video games since I was 7 and I got an SNES as a gift. And I was born at the end of 92. That was only 4 years after Brazil signed its current constitution, and only 6 years since Brazil managed to get rid of a military dictatorship. So gaming was very hard to come by, and honestly, I only got into gaming that young at age 7 because I had extended family members who had more money than me who gifted me an SNES. So everything about what I was as a child was I was an outlier. I was different from what a Brazilian usually is. So listening to a concert like this, where music from the stuff that I played or at least was familiar with because it was around other games I played, and seeing it be given this huge level of respect by the arranger, by the orchestra itself, even by the presenter here.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned him. Presenter, I don't have his name at hand, but he seems to be also a recurring. He has a recurring presence with the Swedish Radio Orchestra's project, it seems. That did bring tears to my eyes on a couple times as well. In my case, particularly, the Mega Man Suite did that, because while I don't cry easily, when it happens, it's because I'm feeling validated, or sometimes you could say vindicated.
Yeah.
That I was different, but that doesn't mean I was wrong. Doesn't mean I was weird. And that's what this concert did to me. It made me feel validated, and I love it for it. This isn't a response I had with video games live. I listened to a lot of video games live, but that was video game music being played as video game music just at a stage.
Yeah.
This was different.
This was different. And this is how it should be done. There's one thing I wanted to bring up. There was this image in my head, and I just remembered where it was from. Let's talk about S&M. I'm going to let that sit for a second before I clarify that I'm talking about Metallica's, orchestral album, Symphony of Metallica, S&M.
Sure, that too.
Exactly. Anyway, I remember during one of the videos, I think it was for No Leaf Clover, where you see this guy in a suit, full on, I'm here for Michael Kamen, the conductor, and the orchestra, and I'm just going to stand here being all, professional orchestra guy, right next to an actual Metallica fan who was headbanging right next to it. I remember this camera shot very clearly, because it shows the dichotomy of who's there. But it also goes back to that thing we were talking about earlier about tradition. And how kind of wrong it turned out to be, because if I were going to be either one of them, I want to be the guy headbanging who's there clearly because he enjoys the music. Not this other guy who's there because I am smart guy who must be orchestra guy. Wearing a suit and tie to a Metallica concert. And again, kind of shows that same kind of thing, who's accepted here and who isn't. And the fact that this concert in particular is so accepting both by the performers and the actual artists themselves and by the writers and by everyone else is really kind of a miracle.
I am reminded of Scorpions when they did their orchestral album, so to speak. Moment of Glory, I believe it was the title, with the Berliner Philharmonic. They kind of did their best to mix the two worlds, I think, because they played a lot of songs that were fairly calm, so there was a lot of room for the orchestra to shine there. But at the same time, they did play Rock You Like a Hurricane with a very bombastic intro that really fitted really, really well. And the conductor, bless his heart, he was wearing a leather rock. So he was kind of trying to rock the two different fashions.
Oh boy.
But you look at the audience, and the audience is just sitting there. Just looking.
Oh.
It's like, why?
No.
That version of Rock You Like a Hurricane is probably their best. Why are you doing this? But yeah, it's sad that orchestral music has these things, and hopefully those are barriers that will be broken, because they are annoying barriers.
They're heading that way. Like, there's this great pair of tweets from the same person like 6 years apart. And the first one is like, dum-dums want to hear their dum-dum video game music playing in orchestras. And 6 years later, video game music is saving orchestras.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so even from that one guy, like, there's still like the negative connotation there, but it's trending in the right direction. And the fact that, yes, these sorts of concerts, like today in Los Angeles at the Hollywood Bowl, or last night at Los Angeles at the Hollywood Bowl, is a Lord of the Rings concert. I think it's for the show. I think it's Bear McCreary's work. I think it's Ring of Power. At the Hollywood Bowl that my friend Ferial's going to. And I'm like, that's awesome, and I totally wish I could be there. Because that's the kind of thing that orchestras do these days. And I think it's really great that orchestra performance can keep up and keep bringing great music to the masses. I just wish we could pull the stick out of their butts. I wish orchestra isms would start going away, and I think they are. I think they are.
I think at the end of the day, the audience for orchestras is getting way younger.
Yeah.
Because actual classical music, we can find like thousands of different recordings of the same few pieces on streaming nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
But actual songs that we have an actual emotional attachment to, and we want to hear them live, those are much, much more difficult to come by.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's still, there's this like usually thumbing your nose at these sorts of songs, at video game music, even at one of the shows I saw at the Hollywood Bowl when I was younger was John Williams. And even then, I got the impression that the orchestra was just there for his sake and not really there because they love the music, right? Like, even then, that was easy to get.
That's
this is John Williams we're talking about.
Great.
It's great. It's great. I found myself very just emotionally overwhelmed by how much love this concert has for both its audience and its work. You don't hear that often, and I really want to call that out again and again and again and again, because it needs to be said again and again and again. This is how music should be. Love what you do. I think a major goal of this podcast is to spread love of video game music to people from an actual place of love, and I'm glad we're not the only ones doing it.
And as we're shouting out, I want to give some shout-outs to the orchestra here. We'll be leaving on the episode description a link to their official website. It has an English version. You can actually, in fact, listen to some of their concerts, watch them on their website. Not everything is available there. It seems like their concerts only stay up on their website for a limited amount of time. But do go listen to them, watch them. It's mostly classical stuff that's up there as of the time of this recording, but still cool orchestra. It seems like they're very open-minded, and we should celebrate more orchestras like that, in my opinion. So yeah, and incidentally, shout out to the singer as well. something I learned during the preparations for this episode is that she has actually performed with a person who might be my favorite violinist, Janine Jansen. So that's cool. She seems to be getting recognition as well, because Janine Jansen is a big name. So
I mean,
kudos.
you have a soprano that talented, people are going to want to hire her. That's just how it works.
So yeah, if you can go support this orchestra, because they seem like really, really cool people.
For sure.
And on that note, I believe we can then move past that lovely little concert and talk about what we've been playing recently.
Music Arcade, now playing. You know, I love this segment. This kind of feels like an anticlimax.
A little bit.
You think it's an anticlimax. I'm going to make it a transition, because the first thing I've listened to was after this concert. I thought back of when was the last time I heard a video game related concert that wasn't the Primals, and the answer was concert troupe, an orchestra. Yes, that's the word. That I've listened to in a convention. They seem to do a lot of convention stuff in France. They used to be named, back when I saw them, Sega, but renamed to avoid getting sued by Sega, which makes sense. And they have an active YouTube channel in which they do a fair amount of good stuff, including a couple of months ago, take on the main theme from Octopath Traveler, which is a very enjoyable ride. I love that we talked about deep cuts in very popular games. They do deeper cuts on less popular games as well, and I really appreciate that. The transition point here is that you've mentioned that the audiences for concert is getting very different than what it used to be even 10, 20 years ago. And I think that's also true of the orchestras, because people gotta play that music, and a fair amount of those people are going to have played video games, and so I appreciate, as a kind of not even counterpoint, but kind of the other face of that coin, have seen this room packed full of an orchestra that is also silly little people wearing silly little hats, playing silly little video game music. Warmed my heart.
That's very fair. You know, I've always said the best performances come from people who enjoy what they're performing, and that does matter a lot.
I certainly look like they're enjoying it, and I mainly picked that performance to appeal to your appreciation of Octopath Traveler, but the one that really got to me was a jazz concert version of a track from Rhythm Heaven, with lyrics too.
Oh, right.
And audience interaction. And it's a very fun time.
Honestly, if there's any genre of music that you should get a audience interaction, any video game genre actually, where you should get audience interaction when playing it at a stage, that should be rhythm games, right?
Well, this one in particular is, the minigame concerned is literally about an idol singing a song and you being the audience of monkeys having to clap and cheer in line with a few vocal cues. So, perfect fit, 10 out of 10, no notes.
Fair enough.
As for other games I've played, Void Train is probably the least musically remarkable one. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's a train in the void, and sometimes you get on a depot and shoot Nazis. So, pretty fun premise.
That's
That's a sentence.
That's a game that I've watched Markiplier play a couple of times, and it actually looks really neat. And I'd love to play it, but that's a game that I only want to play multiplayer. I do not want to play that game single player. That needs to have people.
Yeah, and there's definitely some fiddly parts. I've not really had a good time with the more puzzly bits, and I have definitely objections on some of the more. Let me just say that I really like the animations in a way that can get in the way of more open crafting gameplay kind of things.
Right.
Ironically, they give you a bit too much on rails at times. But overall, definitely some nice things. The music, the most notable part is that when you approach a portal, the music suddenly gets really booming and really ominous as you start to arrive to it, and that certainly helps kind of put a vocal and audio clue on something you're not necessarily going to look at while you're busy grabbing resources in the void or cooking your ingots. But from one space train game to another, I've also started playing Honkai Star Rail, and it's got that enjoyable JRPG vibe and different planets that lend themselves to different music atmospheres. I really like the very first space station one, but of course the most notable part of it is probably the Bellowbug big boss fight theme, Wildfire, which has the best choice of music transition there is. Because it's a two-phase boss. Where in the first phase she just summons giant ice swords and freezes your characters, but when you deplete her health bar, she regenerates, and that's not what the music transitions. Because then she charges a big attack, and the music only transitions starting with the refrain when she does fire her big attack and throws meteors at your face. Which is the perfect time to transition music themes.
You know what
and add the lyrics.
You know what I'm reminded of when you say that?
Go ahead.
I'm reminded of Thornton EX, because the same thing happens. You have that first theme that plays throughout the entire Knights of the Round battle, and then Ultimate End goes off, and then once that glass shatters, it transitions into the main theme. That's a very similar kind of transition.
And I'm very glad that they went beyond the more obvious pick of when the face changes, the music changes, and to have a bit of a cinematic flair to the conclusion of this arc. So yeah, good stuff. Overall, I appreciate the music in that game, and I look forward to more. And finally, because of a stream I saw that reminded me of some PS1 rhythm game, I kind of went on a nostalgia dive in my some of my music game roots and re-downloaded Stepmania. So I've been enjoying the Dance Dance Revolution packs of Stepmania a little bit more.
Do you have an actual dance pad?
I did. I don't anymore.
Fair enough.
But I've played a lot, even on keyboard, and turns out, even after probably over a decade, that muscle memory is here to stay.
Nice.
It's like a bike. And lastly, I have not been playing Tears of the Kingdom. Next.
I've just got Yakuza and Army of Ruin, which we'll talk about Yakuza in 2 weeks with Towards the Year of the Dragon, and we've talked about Army of Ruin, so I got nothing to add here. Next!
And we'll probably say some good stuff for Yakuza.
Yakuza 4 is a good soundtrack. I like the soundtrack a lot.
Do you like bass? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie?
Sure. So, most of my games have been repeats of the previous episode, but I've been going back into Hitman World of Assassination because I need to unlock some stuff. I'm so annoyed that they didn't keep my unlocks from Hitman 1 for some reason when moving the data over to Hitman 3.
Oh, no.
I lost my progress on Hitman 1.
That shouldn't have happened. I'm sorry.
It does have, like, it recognizes that I have the Game of the Year edition and all that, but I have to unlock all that stuff again.
That is deeply annoying.
It is a fun soundtrack, though. Very bombastic. And I also, in the meantime, saw that a little game was on sale called, I think the name kind of calls for a bit of a more dramatic tone here. The Case of the Golden Idol. Sorry, I had to.
No.
Yeah, it's an indie game, very much in the same vein as I think Return of the Obra Dinn, the name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you get a scene, it's frozen in time, you go through everything in that scene to find clues, and you need to, do your best Sherlock Holmes impression and try to understand what the hell is going on.
Right.
Main difference is it's in 2D, while Obra Dinn was in 3D. But it's a short, little, fun game. If you're into detective type stuff, it's really enjoyable. Soundtrack's pretty cool. Since the scenes are kind of stuck in time, the soundtrack is way more focused on the ambience and on setting that mystery tone, since you are solving mysteries every time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's done very well executed. The composer has, I think, one track from the base game and one track from the new recently released DLC available on his YouTube channel, his personal YouTube channel. I don't think the soundtrack is on streaming though. You can get it through Steam, for whatever that's worth. The Steam player sucks. But it's a fun soundtrack. Not really one I'd listen to outside of the game, but it complements the vibes of the game very well. That's about it. The rest is repeats. Destiny 2 is still ongoing. Recently, we've been having the Guardian Games event, which is sort of an in-universe version of the Olympics. So that has one different song that plays in the tower, which is the main socializing hub of the game.
Right.
And ironically, lots of trumpets, because it's meant to sound like the Olympics. So, trumpets.
They're not gonna stop appearing because we've talked about them.
Oh no. That's pretty much it.
And
what
and given the next episode's theme, we're probably going to have a lot more trumpets going on.
Oh yeah. Expect a return of the Doot in a couple weeks. Yeah, that's it for me for the past few weeks.
Fair enough. And I think with that brings this episode to a close. Thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in. This has been a wonderful look at a really great project that I'm glad Eddie brought to us. I'm very happy about this. So thank you again.
And I'm glad the project seems to still be ongoing, because they had a recent tour 2022/2023. Hopefully they have more.
Wonderful.
As always, you can find the songs, or in this case, the concert, in the description, as well as some other associated stuff. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or ideas. We love feedback. Love you all. See y'all next time.
See ya.
See you next time.